This is the story of one woman's rise and fall. It's about how she hit rock bottom and then blazed a trail to become a New York Times bestselling author. Today's story is called The Woman Who Walked 1,000 Miles.
Season 1 of the story features 12 women trailblazers who changed the world. The story is brought to you exclusively by Salesforce, who strives to create workplaces where everyone feels empowered to bring their full, authentic selves to work. And now, onto the story.
The man that said he loved her had a gleam in his eye. He took her upstairs and into his room. They'd been there several times before, but this time something was different. He said he was excited to show her something. She glanced around and thought he might have a gift for her. Instead, he showed her over to a table. On it was aluminum foil, a lighter, and a pipe. Her heart sank. He wanted her to smoke with him. She was alone in a new town with no money and what felt like few options. Desperate and with no bright future pulling her forward, she agreed. From that moment, her life became a nightmare, and she put one foot into her own grave. Her life had always been complicated, but she had never been in so much danger. 10 years earlier, she was 13. It had been a happy time until she had to watch her parents' marriage fall apart. Screaming and yelling became the norm. She watched her father beat her mother. It was almost impossible for her mother to leave him. When her mother did summon the will to leave, she took the children and moved with their new stepfather into a small farmhouse. For the first few years, their house didn't have running water or electricity. The girl didn't mind, and it wasn't until she grew up and moved away to college that her family finally got indoor plumbing. During those years, her mother managed to hold the struggling family together, but there were many things she couldn't fix. From all outward appearances, the young girl was successful. She was a star cheerleader, ran cross country, and even won homecoming queen. To the people around her, it looked like she didn't have any problems. But when she looked in the mirror, she hated what she saw. The faults led her to isolation and eating disorders. Along the way, she used her achievements in school and sports to help numb her pain. After high school, she was off to college. She was now the undisputed star of the family. She was able to excel in all the ways that they had not. She didn't get any handouts, and she had to earn everything along the way. At only 20 years old, she got married, and she began to build a life with her new husband. Industrious didn't even begin to describe her. She worked as an emergency medical technician, a youth counselor, a waitress, a temporary employee, whatever she had to do to pay the bills. She was all about hard work. In her senior year of college, her world came crashing down. Her mother received a diagnosis of lung cancer, and the doctors discovered it too late. She watched her mother suffer a painful death. The one person who had been able to hold their family together was gone. Soon, the girl's siblings drifted apart. A few years later, her once promising marriage ended abruptly. Now she was alone. After a few months, she summoned the strength to begin exploring the world again. Up until this point, she had done everything her culture told her to do. She'd excelled at school, college, and many of society's favorite games. It felt like all the games she had won led her nowhere. Culture can be stifling, but it can also protect us. As the girl broke free from the shackles of societal expectations, she soon found herself in the underworld. She was 26 years old, living in Oregon, and dating a guy who ran with a dangerous group of people. She thought that she might be able to save him and held out hope while they dated. At first, the relationship was fun, and sometimes it was even thrilling. But on the day when he led her upstairs to that room and asked her to smoke heroin with him, her dream vanished. In her suffering, she had managed to find someone suffering more than her. Only this person wasn't looking for love or for redemption. He was drowning, and he was looking to pull somebody down with him. She was never one to watch someone drown, and she kept agreeing to smoke with him. She soon found what it felt like to have a temporary relief from every single problem. But there are trade-offs for everything in this world. She was struggling, and she started to realize that her own choices were only making it worse. That room, her boyfriend, the pipe, his friends. It was all evil. It was toxic. She was standing at the precipice of a dark abyss. With hardly any money, she didn't have any good plans to escape. But sometimes you don't need plans. Sometimes you don't need resources. Sometimes you just need to cut ties and run like hell. All she did have was one crazy idea. It wasn't a plan, but it was an escape route. The crazy idea beckoned to her, and it terrified her. She took stock of her current situation. After careful analysis, maybe the idea wasn't so crazy. Besides, the man she was dating, who should have been protecting and lifting her up, was trying as hard as he could to drag her down with him. Looking back, she would say that the reason for her escape was simple. For the first time in her life, she didn't do something for society or her family's approval. For the first time in her life, she decided to do something for her own approval. She decided to save herself. Her crazy idea was an escape route. The escape route was the Pacific Crest Trail. That trail is a narrow hiking trail that runs all along the west coast of North America. It stretches from Mexico all the way up to Canada, and along the way, it goes through California, Oregon, and Washington. It is 2,650 miles long, and it takes about 5 months to complete on foot. The massive challenge in front of her seemed impossible. Would it work? She had no idea. But she did have faith that a better life was possible. What if that escape route and the adventure she was looking at would make her into the woman she knew she could become? What if on that path she could reclaim all the best parts of her life, about that little girl that she'd once been? What if she could save her? By making a choice designed to heal herself, she gained new powers. Her faith in the value of pursuing her own salvation drove her to take the first step. At the age of 26, without any prior hiking experience, she began hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. Along the trail, she learned what life in the wild was like. Every step taught her to endure uncertainty. Every step heightened her senses. In an environment where you must be present to protect yourself, your senses come alive. At one point, she was walking past a farm. She thought nothing of it until she spotted a bull on the loose. The massive bull came charging right at her. The previous person that she was might have panicked, but now her senses were working on her behalf. She backed up against a tree and blew the whistle she had brought to help keep animals away. Against the tree, adrenaline coursed through her body. She blew the whistle as hard as she could. Soon she ran out of breath, opened her eyes, and she couldn't see the bull anywhere. She wasn't sure if it was still lurking nearby or if it had left. Almost paralyzed with indecision, she summoned the courage to keep walking. Thankfully, the bull had grown irritated by the whistle, and that was the closest she ever came to danger on her entire trip. At the end of 1,100 miles, she had a new outlook on life. She had safely escaped her past life, all the toxic relationships, and her growing addiction. Of course her hike was risky, and most parents would call it stupid. But it's far too simplistic to label her adventure and her escape route as just stupid. Sometimes we only have two choices, the stupid option and the less stupid option. Sometimes it's only risky or riskier. She could have remained in her old private hell of addictive habits and horrible people. Instead, she kindled the faith that she deserved more. She'd made bad choices, she knew it, but she knew she had potential, and she went on an adventure in the real world that catalyzed it. As we go through life, sometimes we find ourselves in our own private hell. If you know you're in hell, then you have to escape. Sometimes you have to literally run away and leave your old life behind. When you do, realize that the escape is risky, but the alternative of doing nothing is far riskier. As Carl Jung famously said, we are doomed to make choices. Life can be horrible. The suffering can be unbearable. And in those moments of pain, sometimes all we have to do is make the best choice we can see. It doesn't have to be perfect. All we have to do is make a choice that doesn't make things worse. Over time, we can take small steps away from suffering. The girls' hike on the Pacific Crest Trail were the first steps away from making her life worse. They were the first steps towards opportunities that she never could imagine. When she began her journey, she was a struggling writer on the verge of addiction. After her journey, she had won a new level of real confidence. As she recovered, she began writing an advice column for a local paper. It was a hit. She started exercising and eating better, and it wasn't long before she found somebody new to date. After they'd been dating for a few months, they got married. A year later, they had their first child. It would take her 6 more years after her marriage and first child to finish and publish her first book. It was called Torch. It was a memoir based on her early life. It would take her another 6 years after that before she finished her second book. This book, you may have heard of. It's called Wild. When Wild was published, it took off and debuted on the New York Times bestseller list. At the time, on the other side of the country, a new celebrity was looking to revamp her book club. That celebrity was Oprah. The book she picked was wild, and she invited the young woman who wrote it onto her show. That woman was Cheryl Strayed. In a matter of months after that, Cheryl Strayed became a household name. She had made the sacrifices, she bet on herself for decades, and now she was in the promised land of opportunities. Cheryl faced suffering, troubles, and struggles throughout her life, but she didn't stop, and she didn't let them weigh her down. She transmuted them through her writing. That writing resonated like a lightning rod with people. Because she had faced and overcome so much, she had so much wisdom to offer. It was like a magnet. She created her own proving ritual of hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, alone. She went through the challenges and unlocked a life that many might view as a literal heaven. Now she gets paid to write and create. There's always evil in the world. There are always dangers. Sometimes they take the form of people who are drowning that will try to take you down with them. Sometimes our troubles might chase us down like a bull. Those evils might gain the upper hand, but they don't have to silence or trap us. When we find ourselves in the clutches of evil, we must have the humility to realize it. We must love ourselves enough to plot an escape route. That escape route might be the Pacific Crest Trail. It could be taking a new job across the country. Maybe it's ending an abusive relationship. Maybe it's leaving your parents' house and beginning to live on your own in the world. Maybe it's saying yes to a new business partner or investment. It won't be perfect, and a life worth living is never without risk. Don't worry about things being perfect. Take a small step today to make your life better. If you're brave enough, no matter where you're at, you can always find a path to escape. You don't have to make the perfect plans or make the perfect choices. All you have to do is just escape. That's her story. What's yours going to be?
Thank you for listening to The Story. As a thank you, we have an exclusive giveaway for listeners of The Story, a chance to win one of 10 free tickets to Dreamforce, courtesy of our presenting sponsor, Salesforce. Salesforce is committed to supporting trailblazers like you. If you don't know Dreamforce, you are in for a treat. Dreamforce brings together thought leaders, industry pioneers, and customers for 4 high-energy days of learning, inspiration, equality, fun, and incredible concerts. You can head to thestorypodcast.com and enter to win today. That is thestorypodcast.com. Thank you again to our presenting sponsor, Salesforce, for helping promote equal opportunity and sharing these stories of trailblazers.
If you like this episode of The Story, please help spread these stories by telling one friend. Also, you can hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. The Story is created by our team here at The Mission. The Mission is your #1 source for accelerated learning. To get more stories and podcasts like this and our world-class newsletter, subscribe at themission.co. That's themission.co. See you next time.